All right, guys, the last time we talked, I had the motor in, the exhaust manifolds painted, and we discovered we need to cut either the manifold or the intake a little bit to make it fit together. But I decided the other day to go ahead and put the transmission in, and it did not go well. I'm going to tell you what happened. So this is a story of ignorance, I guess you could say. I wasn't expecting this. I didn't know the history of this engine when I got it. It's been rebuilt now, but I had no idea what kind of transmission was in it. But I knew that I wanted the automatic that came out of this van to go back in it. I had it rebuilt. Paid a lot of money to have it rebuilt, and then I'd get it back in here. And then I go to install it. Now keep in mind it's got a replacement flex plate there, but that's fine. It's the exact same that came off the old transmission. So I put the transmission under there and I set it up with the bolt holes perfectly at 12 o'clock. Torque converter bolts at 12 o'clock. And I just try to line it up on a jack, push it into place. And it never will snap into place. So I'm jiggling and I still can't get it. And I decided to go ahead and thread on a little bit. And after about 45 minutes of jiggling and wiggling and struggling under this van, I decided this is not working. And at one point, I had turned the engine over at the crank so that I could get another nut on the torque converter down at the bottom where there's access. And it got to the point where I couldn't turn the engine and it was stuck. So I said, uh-oh, something's bad wrong. So I took the entire transmission out from under it and I placed it over here in the floor. So my first thought was this flex plate ain't right. So I took the torque converter out of the transmission and I just kind of mocked it up. And then I realized it's not gonna go because there's a manual transmission pilot bearing that's still in the crank of this engine. Now, the snout of that torque converter needs to go there. Without that space open, you're not going anywhere. So, I started reading horror stories on the internet about people who have damaged their transmission, trying to jam a transmission into place. Now, I didn't get too wild and crazy with it. Didn't get too rough, but I was nervous. So I decided to take the transmission back to the shop that rebuilt it and let them look at that front pump. And luckily, the transmission shop said I didn't hurt anything. It's still good to go. They put it all back together. And kudos to them for helping me out. I know this was a stupid move on my part. But now the fun part. We're going to use bread to stuff up in that hole and smash that pilot bearing out. Now I've heard many times that this works, but I've never done it for myself. But first things first, we are going to have to steal bread from in the house without getting caught by the wife. So what would a sandwich be without a little bit of spices and stuff, you know? Well, let's see. We gotta get some spice on that sandwich. Anyway, we're gonna stuff the pilot bearing with bread as packed as we can. This feels so wrong. This reminds me of when you're a kid and you stuff a peanut butter and jelly sandwich into the VCR. So I've been told that this is the perfect tool for the job. 3/8 extension, use the big round end of it. Yeah. That'll have to be stuffed with bread too, maybe. All right, I'm gonna get under there and give it a whack. This should be interesting. Yes. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I need to get the bread out of my motor. All right, I got a major tip for you guys. Not all 3/8 are created equal. This one was a little bit bigger, and at first, as you could probably tell on the video, it was pushing the pilot bearing in. It was just microscopically too big. This one though was perfect. It's a Pittsburgh, so that's the cheaper brand. This is a PM brand. You do not want to use one unless you've basically stick what you've got up into the pilot bearing first to see if it goes all the way in without sticking. The transmission will probably just slide in now. There it is, still in the van here from the transmission shop. There's the little snout that's on it. Again, I will keep this at perfectly at 12 o'clock and it should slide right in, right through. I could put all the bolts in, and let's cross our fingers. Have to get some help to get this thing out of the van later on. I'll see you guys next week.